this will never be front page in the New York Times.
Now, has Bloomberg brought it up on their network? Because I haven't.
Well, the magazine has. I don't know if their website is how far they've gotten on it. But again, how many people read Bloomberg? Not very many. It's the same thing with Foreign Affairs, that journal. I think everybody should subscribe to it and read it religiously, like the Bible, so you'll have some idea of what your country is doing in foreign relations that's detrimental to us as a nation state. But the American people no longer want this. And this isn't going to be aired. So what you're hearing me say today, while it's true, and it's probably the most dramatic truth since the last time I was on your show and I talked about Saudi Arabia being responsible for the 9/11 attacks, not bin Laden. And the documents I provided now are 550 pages in a PDF file. I was interviewed all over the nation on one radio station. Not one other radio station is interested in that subject. Nobody is interested in this subject. $29 trillion of American dollars has been created out of thin air. And now this is the really sad part. American people, still in their ignorance of how banking works, will say, yeah, but interest rates are at zero. Really? Interest rates are at zero? My credit card says 29.5%. Every time I make an error, I get a fee, and my interest rate goes up. I don't know about you, but the people that signed on to variable rate mortgages, 8 years ago, I've never not warned people all the way back to 1978 when Jimmy Carter and Paul Volcker lifted the ceiling on interest rates. We used to have a ceiling on 18%. No interest rate could ever be charged more than 18% on anything in this nation. It was the law. Volcker and Jimmy Carter decided to lift the ceiling. So now interest rates can go to 35%.
Now, what was the purpose of that? To make money more available?
So the Federal Reserve System could create more money out of thin air and charge a higher interest rate as a return on that capital invested. Now, you have to understand, they're charging us, you and I, interest on this billions and billions, $14 trillion in debt that we're carrying right now. They're getting interest on it. It's now the largest single item in the budget. We talk about defense, we talk about Social Security is bankrupt, Medicare, Medicaid. We're talking in circles here. Everybody's talking in circles because nobody wants to talk about the real problem. The essence of the problem is that we have a fiat currency, a for-profit central bank, and our Congress has alleviated itself from monitoring the monetary policy of our own country. It is Congress's job to do that, according to the Constitution.
Of course, they do insider trading. Congress does. So, why would they give?
Why would they give a rip? Yeah. Because in the end, who do you think gives a congressman and senator the money so they can run for office? It's the banking industry. And even if you say, well, actually, it's General Electric or Archer Daniels Midland, again, if you look into the banking industry in this country, you'll discover that of the largest multinational corporations in the world, 50% of them, 30% of those corporations, 30% of those corporations are owned by banks.
Or act like a bank, like what...
General Electric is a bank.
Yeah.
So in the end, the problem is, and will always rest with, money. Who's got the money rules. And right now, the American people are being utterly raped to a degree that even this old cynic, Craig Hulet, could never have imagined. I knew it would be over $10 trillion, the bailouts, because I knew the housing bubble was a fraud. This didn't cause a crisis in the banking system. There was no crisis. They fabricated it out of thin air so they could rape the American people. It's the biggest theft in galactic history. But I was off by $20 trillion. And I was being accused of being an alarmist years ago when I said it would be $10 trillion.
In fact, people questioned that on the show here.
On this very show. And now it's come out that the actual figure is over $29 trillion. And this is only the first document of all the documents released at the Fed. The Levy Institute says this is going to be ongoing. Every month they're going to issue a new document as they uncover more and more and more of what's being done. And like I said, it's operating exactly the way a criminal would operate. They're creating a facility on Monday, loaning $30 billion to their friends in the banking system throughout the world where there is no crisis. There's nothing wrong with these banks. They're not in trouble financially. They're just loaning them money. They're paying back the loan. Everybody makes interest on it. The ones that borrowed the money can then reloan the money up to 10, 20 times under fractional reserve banking rules in those countries and in our own country. They pay the money back. They close down the facility, open up another one. There are dozens of facilities open right now that are lending billions of dollars out, and on Friday they'll close those facilities down, and they'll just disappear off the books. And you know nothing about this. Congress knew nothing of this. There's no oversight. There's no control mechanism in place. Nothing. We are literally being robbed blind.
Well, with that, we'll take a break. This is Coffee Talk on FM 94.7 and AM 1450. And with me today, we have Craig Hulet. And if you have any comments or questions, you can give us a call here at 533-5259, 533-KBKW. We'll be back in just a moment. It's 8:52. This is Coffee Talk on FM 94.7 and AM 1450. Mostly cloudy today. Highs will be in the 40s. And then tomorrow, mostly cloudy, becoming showery by afternoon. Then on Wednesday, mostly sunny. Thursday, partly sunny. And then for the Christmas weekend, we'll have some more rain. But no snow in the forecast. Maybe up in the mountains there might get some, but they don't look for a lot of precipitation over the holiday weekend, which this has been one of the driest. I remember a number of years ago we had another real dry December.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
I moved to the rainforest because I like the rain a lot. A lot of people get depressed. I just like it to be drizzly and dark and rainy and moody and brooding, and I just crack open Friedrich Nietzsche and just I'm in heaven.
So now do you take vitamin D or do you pour it down the toilet?
No,
I don't need vitamin D.
No, probably the only thing I pour is single malt, and probably too much of that as well. Well, like I said, AIG revolving credit facility came out of thin air. A couple of weeks later, it disappeared, and they created the AIG Securities Borrowing Facility out of thin air, lent more billions of dollars, and then that disappeared. And then they created the Maiden Lane 2 Fund, and that created billions of dollars and lent out. And like I said, to every bank in the world, we are bailing out Europe. All this talk about the crisis in Europe, we've been bailing out Europe the whole time. Where do you think the European bankers are finding the dollars to bail out their own country's currencies? They're using U.S. dollars. The American people, again, haven't got a clue that you are being used as literally a fire hose, not a water tap any longer, but a bloody fire hose of money created out of thin air. $29 trillion. I'm sorry, let me be very clear. It's more than $29 trillion. This is only the first phase of the Levy Institute's discovery, is that it's already, just by going through the most superficial look at the documents, it's over $29 trillion. What it's going to end up being, I haven't got a clue. But this is not a sustainable reality, and this is the bubble that when it bursts, this country will be in a full-blown bloody depression. If we're not on the brink of it already. Yeah, because the unemployed are going to remain unemployed. And that's why, I wish I didn't have grandchildren. I only found out just a few years ago that I actually had grandchildren because I hadn't seen my son in so many years. I was a Vietnam dad. We were terrible fathers. Still are. We're just Vietnam fathers. We're just terrible fathers. But I find out now I got 3 grandchildren, and it just breaks my heart that these 3 children, my grandchildren, are going to grow up in this country faced with this kind of a travesty as their birthright.
Well, let's go to our listener line. Hi, you're on the air. Hi.
Yes. Mr. Hewlett had mentioned something about these companies being created overnight. I think he named one that had a securities company or something like that.
Yeah, they call them facilities They're not companies. It's a facility within the Federal Reserve banking system that they create literally on the first of the month, and by the 15th of the month, they've lent out $30 billion, and they close it down, and it disappears. Then they open up a new one.
Well, my question is, if it has the word securities in it, or it has to do with securities and exchange or anything like that, doesn't that have to go through the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is federal government, which means that somebody ought to know something about it?
Well, you would think so, but obviously it's not true, because the Securities Exchange Commission was just as startled by these discoveries as anybody. Nobody saw this going on at all.
Is that a false startle? Is that, oh my God, I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah, I think it might be in this case, because what they're doing is they're using one clause in the Federal Reserve Act, one paragraph in the Federal Reserve Act that says that the Federal Reserve, under certain crisis situations, can create a lending facility like TARP. This is the one we were told about, was the TARP funds. And then TARP is, of course, being closed down, and everybody's focused on TARP. Well, in actuality, while that was going on, they were creating dozens of littler TARP funds and lending the money out to banks that had no relationship to the United States or the housing crisis or a financial crisis. Swiss banks are being given this money. Swiss banks.
If greed is so prevalent and so overcoming in people, our American people are doing this to ourselves, to bury ourselves. So what is the future in it?
Well, first of all, I understand what you're saying, and one of the guys I've worked with for 20 years, he's a licensed, SEC licensed financial advisor. He used to handle Bechtels, the family fund, Bechtel family. And he's the CFO of a corporation that I'm now the president of. And him and I have this argument constantly. What are we doing? We're destroying the system. We're doing this to ourselves. And I keep having to correct this old-timer off Wall Street that, no, you're wrong. There's two systems. One system is doing very well by this. Then there's us.
What system is doing very well by us?
The bankers.
An international banking system.
The international global marketplace of banks, multinational corporations that have no relationship. Do you understand that of the 100 largest economies in the world, the United States being the largest economy in the world, 51 of the largest economies in the world are now multinational corporations and banks.
So our president, puppet head we have, cannot do anything about it, no matter who the puppet head president may be.
It really wouldn't make any difference who the president is. The president would have to do something so startling to correct this. He would have to issue an executive order and demand that Congress pass that executive order unanimously and endorse it to shut down the Federal Reserve banking system, as Ron Paul would like to see happen, and that power return to the U.S. Congress as is rightfully its due.
Well, we're going to have to stop this for this hour until we get past our news, but thank you very much for calling.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye. It is approaching 9 o'clock, so what we'll do is we'll take a break for the latest news from ABC, and then we'll get local and regional news with Dave Haviland, and then Craig will be back on next hour to continue this conversation and take your calls at 533-5259, 533-KBKW.